big story this morning is Mike Evans signed to a big deal by the Tampa Bay Bucks, and that is a massive story here in Jacksonville because now all eyes go to Calvin Ridley. In Jacksonville, all eyes already were on Calvin Ridley, but here's the story on the Bucks. This is I'm going to give you the numbers, Austen, and I want you to tell me if this is bigger than you thought it would be for Mike Evans, who obviously is an accomplished receiver and a Hall of Fame-bound receiver for what he's been able to do, somewhat quietly at times, actually. He's underrated in the National Football League if you look at his resume, what he's done compared to some other folks. But according to Greg Auman out of Tampa, it's a 2-year, $52 million deal, and there are other reports that it's $35 million guaranteed.
Good for him, man.
Well, great for him. I mean, it's last payday for him at 30 years old. We did this the other day on the show. I can't remember if it was Friday or Thursday, but I think it was Friday without you. And basically put this question out there. For the next 2 years, at these guys' age, who would you rather sign, Mike Evans or Calvin Ridley? Not to say the Jags would be fishing in that pond, but just if you had the choice between those two, would you pick Mike Evans or Calvin Ridley at this stage? And some of the things that go into this is Ridley is about 16 months younger.
Okay. I mean, that doesn't matter.
Than Evans.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, hasn't played as many games because of the suspension and injury and the time off. Mike Evans, certainly the more proven over his career and the better receiver. And obviously, the Bucs said, hey, worth $26 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Mike Evans all day over Calvin Ridley. Like, that's a no-brainer. You know, when you're putting up 13 touchdowns in a season, elevating Baker Mayfield, yeah, you're going to get some looks. So, in terms of the money, you know, I get age can be a concern, but if you watched any of Mike Evans last year, he's showing no signs of slowing down. And the only detriment to Mike Evans, why nobody really ever talks about him, he is a sure bet Hall of Famer, but like he's not in the light like it seems like Devontae Adams is or Tyreek Hill is. It's because Mike Evans just goes about his business. He always reminds me of a guy like Andre Johnson, who you're humble, you go about your business, you're not Dougieing, you're not doing the gritty every single touchdown. You go about your business and do your thing, and that's exactly what Mike Evans has done. And once again, when the numbers are 79 receptions, 1,255 yards, and 13 touchdowns, it speaks for itself. You don't got to gritty. You don't got to do any kind of dances, man, because your playing ability has spoken for itself.
All right, so here's the Jacksonville part of this. There are a couple of things that come out of it. Calvin Ridley now keeps getting bumped up. Calvin Ridley is coming off, by the way, a year where people thought it was pretty pedestrian. I mean, it was good with the numbers, but it also didn't look good all the time. Like you say, Mike Evans, you watch Mike Evans play this year, and you're like, that was good. Mm-hmm. You see Calvin Ridley, you're like, left some things on the table, but, I can talk it into being good. We've done that for the last couple of months, really, right, as we start to get focused for this time of year. And do you want him? Do you get him? Is he worth a second-round pick? Do you risk it and try to keep the third-round pick? All these different conversations that we continue to have. But even with his performance, he obviously still has upside. Now that Higgins is franchised, Pittman's going to stay in Indianapolis according to their front office. Now this Mike Evans move today. Calvin Ridley becomes the top wide receiver free agent on the market. If he hits the market in the legal tampering next Monday, he ain't coming back to Jacksonville. Because somebody's going to pay him a crazy amount of money. We all agree?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think Odell Beckham Jr. might get some looks as well, but Calvin Ridley's unequivocally the number one free agent wide receiver right now in this class.
So 2 years, $52 million, $26 million per for a 30-year-old wide receiver in Mike Evans at $35 million guaranteed. What's the contract going to look like for Calvin Ridley, either on the open market or what will the Jags have to pay to keep him in the next week?
I would say probably 21, 22. Is what Calvin Ridley's going to command. Like, you can't compare, like, I get Calvin Ridley's people see Mike Evans' contract and it's like, oh, well, hey, the market has been reset. No, it hasn't. Because if you look at Mike Evans' numbers, he's never had a season under 1,000 yards receiving. Now, once again, how much does that really mean now with 17 games? Take it for how you want. But Mike Evans has the resume. Not to knock Calvin Ridley or anything, but we know that Mike Evans is a true number one receiver. We can't say the same thing based off last year of Calvin Ridley. So to expect Calvin Ridley to get 24, 25, I think that's going to be a little crazy. I think when you have a very deep wide receiver draft class this year that teams could take some gambles on, I think the Ridley price is going to be 21, 22, if not even a little lower.
All right, so let's just say it's there. Do the Jags still have to get this done, and do they have to get it done now and give up a second-round pick?
I mean, you know how I feel about it. I feel like you have to get the Josh Allen part done first, franchise tag Calvin Ridley, and then work it from there.
Okay, we have 30 hours to do that.
Okay. Well, I better get calling Josh Allen then, huh?
Okay, let's be realistic how this works. That ain't happening.
Guaranteed?
No, I'm not going to guarantee it, but I'll like 90% it.
Okay. So then, yeah, you better get, if you want Calvin Ridley so bad.
I mean, seriously, do you think there's any chance
that
sitting here right now that they're going to extend Josh Allen before 4 o'clock tomorrow?
I'm holding out hope.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the deal. Here's what I don't get, guy. Like, why would I do that if I'm Josh Allen's agent? Why would I even want to talk?
Because they're desperate to sign Calvin Ridley?
Because they're desperate. I'm Josh Allen's agent.
Yeah, if they're desperate to tag Calvin Ridley, don't you have the advantage and say, well, if you want Calvin Ridley this bad, you better give us a little more?
Is that better leverage? Or is it better leverage to see what the open market brings with a new cap that went up more than anybody else thought it was going to on the guys that get signed next week in free agency?
Then go get tagged. Then Josh Allen's getting tagged. And who knows when a deal gets done? Maybe you're not going to show up at the training camp then. That's fine. That's what you risk of happening.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get what you risk. I'm just saying, am I going to get more now on a desperate Jags team or more next week when people hit the free agent market?
I think it's comparable. I really do. I think if Jacksonville's that desperate to keep Calvin Ridley, like Trent Baalke has mentioned, they like Calvin Ridley. They don't care about the second or third round pick. Now, it's what Trent Baalke said. I'll take him at his word for it. I think if that's the case, then yeah, Jacksonville may be a little desperate to pay Josh Allen and to franchise tag Calvin Ridley.
All right, so let's say we'll keep the window open on that, even though I think it's very unlikely. And then if you tag, great. All right. Yeah, that's perfect scenario. Mm-hmm. For this to work out for the Jags right now with 30 hours to go in a perfect scenario, I think is like not very realistic.
Okay.
I just don't. I don't feel it. I might be missing something. I'll be stunned. I've been saying that for weeks. I like that you're keeping the door open. It's not me just being sunshine and rainbows. You can be sunshine and rainbows. But
I'm just trying to be like the best thing for the team, I think.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And I'm not telling you that Trent might not try to do that or the Jags might try not to do that. I think you've got to get these other agents to dance. And even, heck, I'd stop talks if I'm Calvin Ridley's agent.
Yeah.
I'm in the open market, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's plenty of money out there. Unless the Jags do give him a pretty handsome deal for 2 years and whatever and forfeit the second-round pick. So that's the next step. Should they go there? Let's just say because they know better than us, Austen, right? They know if I were to ask Trent Baalke in private, hey, you going to sign Josh Allen by tomorrow at 4? He'd be able to answer right now, yeah, we got no chance. That definitely isn't happening. Well, if that is the answer, then they have two options. They let Ridley walk into free agency or they sign him this week, just like they just did in Tampa to Mike Evans, right?
Correct.
Will the Jags do that? Now, should they do that? Now that they've got the number one target. And by the way, I'm reading something here from Adam Schefter that says Mike Evans was projected to be one of the top, if not top free agent wide receivers available. We knew that. The Chiefs, amongst others, were expected to be interested. Now the top free agent wide receivers include T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Calvin Ridley, Odell Beckham Jr., and Michael Thomas. Okay, well, T. Higgins and Michael Pittman don't seem to be available on the market.
Why did he tweet that if they were just tagged?
It could be on the trade block.
I thought Higgins was actually tagged, wasn't he?
He was, so too. But you could still trade him.
Okay. Yeah, but that's making it sound like
but he's not really a free agent then if he's
tradable.
So anyway, we know Calvin Ridley becomes the top of this market, right? I mean, that's the deal. Calvin Ridley's the top. I'm just going to put this in a very small capsule for everybody. If the Chiefs are interested in a top wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes, holy cow, by next Wednesday, if the Chiefs sign Calvin Ridley as a Super Bowl champ and a contender that you're fighting with to be one of the premier teams of the AFC, and you lose Calvin Ridley, lock the doors, baby. I mean, that is going to be a tough one to swallow here in Jacksonville.
But, I mean, can't you see that happening from a mile away, though? Like, I mean, I don't see the Jaguars paying over market value for Calvin Ridley. I really don't see him saying, hey, we want you so much. Here's an extra $3 million a year. Like, I don't see that happening. I can see Calvin Ridley saying, I'll take a discount and go play in Kansas City because I'm towards the tail end of my career. I want to play with the quarterback and Patrick Mahomes and win a Super Bowl. Like, I can see that. So realistically, and once again, I don't think Calvin Ridley really has any ties here to Jacksonville in terms of what he owes this organization. And if that's what we're talking about, you're going to have to overpay for him because there's other suitors out there with better quarterbacks, with better franchises, with a better ability to win a Super Bowl that he can go to.
Yeah, you absolutely have to overpay. Like that, the money almost doesn't matter anymore. Like, you're going to overpay. And by the way, the Jags have the money to overpay. It's just a matter of what they want to do. This is all the talk about. We'll get to the Brian Burns stuff a little bit later, but the Jags can make moves, especially if they sign Josh Allen to a new deal. I know people are like, oh my gosh, you signed Josh Allen to a $25, $26 million deal, $27 million deal. Well, how are they going to afford all this stuff? No, it actually helps them if they sign Josh Allen this year because they can push a lot of that money down the road, and that creates some extra space to sign a big-time player, really, in the interim. And then, of course, that will also depend on what they do with Trevor Lawrence's deal and other things. There's a lot of maneuverability here. The reality is, I think the Jags, from the get-go, should sign Calvin Ridley and give up the second-round pick. Because I never thought for a minute that he was going to make it to free agency and the Jags were going to get him back to preserve the third-round pick. So if they did that, Austen, and they let him go, and let's just say they pulled the rabbit out of the hat there, well, now they're going to pay $22 million, like you said, a year anyway. Mm-hmm. So why don't you just go in with a 2-year, $40 million deal, whatever guaranteed, however that has to work out. You keep him here. I will say this about Ridley, and I believe this, and I don't know this, but I believe this to be true. I don't think he likes the idea of bouncing around. I think he was comfortable in Jacksonville. I think he likes the state of Florida. He likes it in the Southeast. I don't think he wants to do anything with that 5-degree home game in January in Kansas City. I really don't. I think there is a little bit of an appeal here to playing with Trevor, with Doug. I think he enjoyed it here, but also playing in the state of Florida. You get that no state income tax stuff when you're talking about a big deal here, too. You get the continuity and the comfortable nature of being here again. I do think, though, there's some value. Now, is that enough value to say, hey, I'll take a $5 million discount? No. But I do think there's a little bit of value here, and I think that's why these guys have been able to have some of these conversations over the last couple of months. But the big story here now is the money doesn't matter. Honestly, the second-round pick doesn't matter. You're going to make one of two moves. You're going to go invest in a young receiver in the draft that nobody really knows can play at this level and can help you out, or you're going to bring back Calvin Ridley. And by the way, you're going to do this in an important year for your quarterback. There's a major domino effect here in Jacksonville that if your quarterback going into year 4, your franchise quarterback, are you going to take something away from him? Are you going to take his outside threat away from him and then give him something that we have to hope about coming up through the draft? I mean, there's a lot of ramifications with the next few days here with Ridley.